Let me tell you something I've learned after years of quietly watching people. The ones who speak the least often understand the most. They sit in silence, observing everything, while the rest of the world keeps talking just to fill the silence. They aren't absent. They're paying attention. They aren't shy. They're thinking. They aren't cold. They're guarding something valuable. Their energy, their peace, their deeper understanding of how the world works. Silence isn't empty. It's full of everything other people don't notice. Every tone in a voice, every pause, every small shift in someone's eyes. To quiet people, words are costly, and they use them wisely. If you've ever been told you're too quiet, listen to this. That quietness isn't a weakness. It's a kind of wisdom that loud people rarely see. The psychology of people who don't speak much is deep, layered, and often misunderstood, because silence for them isn't the absence of thoughts. It's the presence of too many thoughts at the same time. Most quiet people speak only when what they have to say truly matters. That's because their mind isn't just thinking about what to say. It's breaking down everything before, during, and after. Who's listening? How will it be taken? What's the meaning behind the words? This isn't overthinking. It's emotional intelligence in action. Psychologists have studied this. People who speak less often show higher self-awareness. They spend more time thinking before responding. It's not that they don't feel emotions. It's that they feel them so deeply that words can fully explain what's happening inside. And that's where the world often misunderstands them. Because society rewards volume. It celebrates loud confidence, strong opinions, and voices that fill every corner of a room. But the quiet person knows something others don't. That noise isn't the same as depth. That speaking more doesn't make your idea more true. And that the strongest words are sometimes the ones never spoken. Think about it. In every room, there's always someone who barely speaks. But when they do, everyone listens. That isn't accidental. That's respect built through silence. Silence creates presence. Presence creates gravity. Quiet people move differently through the world. They notice what others overlook. A trembling hand while someone talks. The hesitation before someone answers. The change of energy when someone walks in. It's like they can read the invisible parts of human behavior. It isn't magic. It's pattern recognition. And it comes from watching, not interrupting. When you speak less, your mind becomes sharper. You begin to hear the things that aren't said. You start to feel the emotions others are trying to hide. And that gives you a certain quiet kind of power. The power to understand without judging, to care without controlling, and to see through the walls people build. But here's the truth. Being quiet doesn't always mean being peaceful inside. For many, silence is armor, a way of holding themselves together. A quiet person may look calm, but inside their mind is a storm of thoughts, memories, fears, and hopes all playing at once. That's why they pause before they speak. They're trying to bring order before sound. Some psychologists say that quiet people often lean toward introversion. That doesn't mean they're anxious or antisocial. It means they protect their energy. They recharge in solitude. They find comfort in inner calm. Too much noise, emotional or verbal, exhausts them. So they use words like an artist uses paint, with care, purpose, and intention. It's not about being mysterious, it's about being accurate, because to them, words matter, and once spoken cannot be taken back. But sometimes silence comes from something deeper, a childhood of being misunderstood, a life full of moments where speaking only brought pain, rejection, or laughter from others. So instead of fighting to be heard, they choose to listen, to watch first and speak later if they have to. Over time, silence becomes more than a habit. It becomes protection. When you realize most people listen just to reply, not to understand, silence becomes safer. And that safety becomes home. But don't mistake their silence for weakness, because within their quiet lies something rare. the ability to think before reacting. In a world ruled by instant opinions and emotional outbursts, that's a superpower. People who talk less often score higher in self-control. The ability to manage impulses. They can feel anger, sadness, or excitement without letting it control their voice. They pause, think, and choose their words with precision. That isn't passivity. It is mastery. And it's for this reason so many great thinkers, writers, and innovators in history were observers first, before they were speakers. They inhabited the quiet corners of their minds, linking concepts no one else could perceive. Because silence bears insight. It's in stillness creativity blossoms, that deep thoughts emerge, that understanding matures. You cannot hear truth amid chaos. You can only hear it in quiet. But let's be truthful. Remaining quiet in the modern world is difficult. People equate silence with discomfort. They attempt to fill every pause with sound, every moment of stillness with remarks. And when you fail to match that rhythm, you are labeled as strange, cold, or distant. But what if being quiet is not a flaw in social rhythm? What if it's an elevated form of rhythm, one that listens more than it talks, that understands before it responds? Because silence doesn't imply nothing is occurring. It implies everything is occurring, just internally. And perhaps that's why quiet people often connect so profoundly when they at last do speak. Because every word they utter has been filtered through thought, empathy, and truth. They are not trying to impress. They are trying to express, honestly, clearly, softly. There is a study from the University of Helsinki that discovered people who tend to be more introspective and quiet often display higher levels of brain activity in regions linked with empathy and self-reflection. That implies their silence is not emptiness, it is processing. They are not just listening to others, they are listening to themselves also. But this type of introspection comes at a cost. Because when you see excessively, hear excessively, and feel excessively, you also carry too much. Quiet people frequently bear invisible burdens. They become emotional sponges, absorbing all things around them. The tension in the room, the sorrow in someone's voice, the energy in a conversation. That is why solitude feels so restorative to them. It is not loneliness, it is detox. And still, when they love profoundly. When they care, it is genuine. When they show up for someone, it is not from obligation. It is from soul-level understanding, because they do not do surface. They do not do small talk. They do meaning. If you have ever met someone like that, someone who speaks softly, but their words remain in your mind long after they are gone, you have met the kind of person who values silence not as a void, but as a canvas. They allow you fill it with your truth. They listen not to reply, but to witness. That is rare. But here is the paradox. Quiet people crave connection, yet they fear being misinterpreted. They want to be seen but not highlighted. They want to be heard but not shouted over. So they frequently retreat, not because they do not care, but because they care too much. It is not that they do not have opinions or emotions. They just prefer to experience them completely before sharing. And when they do share, it is almost sacred, because you are not just hearing words, you are hearing something they have carried quietly for a long time. And if you are someone who is quiet, I want you to remember this. You do not owe anyone noise to prove your worth. You do not have to speak to be powerful. You do not have to explain your silence. It explains itself in the way you notice, the way you feel, the way you understand. Silence is not emptiness. It is a different language, a quieter way of saying, I am here, I see, I understand, and sometimes that says more than words ever could, because in the end, it is not about how much you talk. It is about how deeply you connect, and the ones who live in quiet frequently connect the deepest. They just do it in a manner the world has forgotten how to see. But there is something even deeper behind this type of silence. Something that conceals beneath the calm face and slow speech. It is a story that psychology only starts to explain. Because behind every quiet person, there is usually a long history of noise. Not external noise, internal. The type of noise that comes from growing up in rooms where people talk excessively and listen too little, where emotions were not conversations, they were explosions. So the quiet ones learn to guard their peace by retreating into their own minds. And once you learn that silence is safety, it becomes home. Section break. You see, many quiet people were not born that way. They became that way. Psychologically, it is a defense mechanism called adaptive silence. It is when your nervous system learns that saying less keeps you safe. But over time, it becomes something more than protection. It becomes identity. That is why quiet people frequently come across as mysterious or unreadable. They have spent years fine-tuning their inner world, so the outer world rarely gets full access. It is not about secrecy. It is about boundaries. And those boundaries are not walls. They are filters. Only the ones who truly listen get to enter. But here is the part that is both beautiful and tragic. Quiet people feel deeply but express sparingly, so they frequently go unnoticed in a loud room. The funny thing is, those are the same people who can feel your pain just by observing you. They can sense when your smile is false. 2. Column layout. They can tell when your laugh is a cover because they live in observation, not reaction. In psychology, there is a term called high sensitivity, or HSP, highly sensitive person. Research indicates that roughly 20% of the population has this trait. It is characterized by heightened sensory awareness and emotional responsiveness. In simpler terms, they notice everything, every tone shift, every micro-expression, every small change in atmosphere. It is like their nervous system has no filter for detail, and that is why they talk less, because their brain is constantly processing more data than most people comprehend. Every conversation is 1,000 signals. Squeeze. Page. What is unsaid, how it is said, and why it is said. It is exhausting, so silence becomes their version of rest. But make no mistake, quiet does not mean passive. Many of the world's most influential minds were quiet observers. Albert Einstein once said, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." And that is true. Quiet is not emptiness, it is incubation. It is the space ideas need to breathe before they are spoken. When a quiet person finally shares their thoughts, it is usually something distilled from hours, days, or even years of reflection. Their words are not random, they are refined. That is why they hit differently. They speak rarely, but when they do, it feels like they are handing you a truth they have been polishing in their heart for a long time. Still, that gift comes with loneliness, because in a world that moves fast, stillness can be mistaken for disinterest. People misinterpret quietness as detachment. They think silence means absence. 2. Column layout. But what they do not realize is that quiet people are frequently the most present ones in the room. Their silence is not distance, it is depth. They are not zoning out, they are zooming in. They are studying the details no one else notices, the rhythm of speech, the pattern of pauses, the sincerity in tone. To them, conversation is an art, not a reflex. And that is what makes them powerful communicators. Squeeze page. Just not in the conventional sense. Quiet people frequently excel in nonverbal communication. Their eyes speak, their presence speaks. Section break. They can comfort someone without saying a word. Because empathy at its core does not need sound, it needs presence. And they give that completely. You can usually feel when a quiet person cares. It is in the way they remember small details you mentioned weeks ago. It is in the way they listen, not waiting to talk, but genuinely trying to understand. And that is what makes them unforgettable. But silence has its shadow also. For some, it becomes a barrier. They begin to equate quietness with control, as if avoiding words means avoiding vulnerability. They fear that speaking will reveal too much, open wounds, or invite misunderstanding. So they hold everything in until the silence becomes heavier than sound. Side note: that is the paradox of the quiet soul. They long to be known but not exposed. They crave connection but not chaos. They want to be heard but not questioned. So they hide in plain sight, visible yet unseen. Psychologically, this tension between expression and restraint can create inner conflict. It is why many quiet individuals frequently struggle with overthinking or anxiety. Not because they are weak, but because their minds are constantly trying to balance feeling deeply with staying composed. They feel too much and say too little. Section break. And that gap, the space between what is felt and what is spoken, can become a silent ache. But that same quietness can also be their greatest teacher, because through silence they learn something the loud rarely do. E-commerce grid. That not everything needs to be said to be understood. That presence frequently speaks louder than words. That patience reveals more than reaction ever could. When you are quiet, you notice life's subtleties, the soft sigh before someone gives up, the sparkle in someone's eyes when they talk about what they love, the tremor in their voice when they are pretending to be strong. You see life not as a series of events, but as a symphony of emotions. And that type of perception makes you both wise and fragile. 2-column layout. But perhaps that is the trade-off. Perhaps silence gives you wisdom at the cost of simplicity, because when you see too much, you can never unsee it. And when you understand too much, you can never return to innocence. Yet this is what makes quiet people such grounding forces in a world. They bring calm where others bring chaos. Squeeze page. They bring thought where others bring reaction. They bring presence where others bring noise. And in a time when everyone is trying to speak louder, they remind us of the power of stillness. There is a type of confidence in not needing to fill every silence, a type of strength in not needing to win every conversation. And that is the quiet power. A/B test. The unspoken assurance that truth does not need to shout. So the next time you meet someone who does not talk too much, do not assume they have nothing to say. Perhaps they are just measuring the moment. Section break. Perhaps they are letting you speak because they actually care about what you are saying. Or perhaps they are watching the way you speak because that tells them more about who you are than your words ever could. You will know when you meet one of them. They will listen without judgment. They will look at you in a way that makes you feel seen. They will respond with sentences that feel like mirrors. 2-column layout. They will remind you that silence is not absence, it is attention. And if you are one of those people yourself, if you have ever felt like you do not fit in because you do not talk as much as others, please understand the world needs you. Your silence balances its chaos. Squeeze page. Your stillness restores its sanity. Your reflection deepens its understanding. You do not need to change to belong. Side note: you just need to understand your silence for what it truly is, your way of connecting differently, not louder, not faster, but deeper. Because at the end of the day, the world does not remember who spoke the most, it remembers who made them feel the most. Side note: and the quiet ones, they do that effortlessly. They speak in gestures, they comfort in presence, they express through understanding, and sometimes that is enough. Side note: perhaps the real reason they do not talk too much is not because they are shy or scared, but because they have realized something profound. Words can explain thoughts, but silence reveals truth, and truth does not always need to be spoken to be felt. Section break. So, to the quiet souls watching this, keep being who you are. Do not rush to fill the spaces. Let the world slow down to your frequency. Because silence is not the absence of life, it is where life breathes between the words. And perhaps that is where the deepest type of wisdom lives. In the pauses, in the stillness, in the moments where nothing is said but everything is understood.